What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Stochastic Best Ball channel. My name is Matt Savoca, and I'm here with my buddy Nick Lepre, continuing our process of going through every single team, every single fantasy relevant player, and we were breaking it down division by division. Today is the NFC South. Not necessarily the most exciting division top to bottom. But of course, we've got a heavy Super Bowl favorite in Tom Brady's Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the top. But let's dig into this one with the teams that have a less exciting record. But Nick, how are you today, man? Follow him at Notorious FNTSY, by the way.
I am doing great today, and I'm very excited to talk about this division. As again, while it might be a little bit boring, the Falcons have a 5-win total, the Panthers have a 6-win total. There are a lot of players in this division that are going inside the top 50, top 60 picks of fantasy football drafts. So, in terms of fantasy football, best ball, this is going to be very exciting.
I think it's going to be an exciting division. Bottom line is we have some top end talents. Like you still got to take Christian McCaffrey of the Panthers inside the top 3 players, often the top 2 players. We still have players like Alvin Kamara, whose ADP doesn't make any sense if you're considering the fact that he's not going to get suspended. And then we got to figure out what in the world to do, if anything, with this Atlanta Falcons team. And we'll begin right there. The Falcons have a 5.0 win total in the sports books right now. Arthur Smith, head coach since 2021. I don't know. They got Kyle Pitts. That's what they got. And they drafted Drake London, who's already dealing with some minor injury problems, but there is expected for the regular season. Do they have a quarterback? Big question mark. Do they have any sort of depth at running back? Probably not. Do they have a third wide receiver? Alameda Zacchaeus is technically one. I don't know what to do, man. I've had some Kyle Pitts at ADP, but even at 30, 31, where he's typically going in underdog drafts, that's really rich for me.
Yeah, I do have a decent amount of Kyle Pitts just because I like their Week 17 matchup, and I think that's a good way to get different, right? Because you're just throwing a high pick there to get that correlation, right? Some people might just draft Brian Edwards or Olamide Zacchaeus. Now, Brian Edwards is, in my opinion, a post-hype sleeper. Now, I don't have him ranked as like a top 50 wide receiver, but everyone and their mother was talking about Brian Edwards last year in Oakland or Las Vegas, and now he's in Atlanta. He is banged up a little bit, so, temper your expectations slightly. But I think if he does play, he has some upside in Atlanta. My favorite pick is Drake London. I'm still riding the train, even though he's banged up. I'm still going to keep being the conductor, choo-choo, of the Drake London Express here. I believe that Drake London is in position to be the clear number 1 receiver in this offense. I think Mariota has enough left in the tank to where Drake London will be able to potentially elevate himself to be a top 12 wide receiver in fantasy football. There's not many offenses in the NFL where it's very easy to see a clear wide receiver 1 with a humongous gap between the wide receiver 1 and the wide receiver 2, kind of like Chicago. That's the exact same thing here with Atlanta, and Drake London is going to clearly be the number 1 guy, unless Kyle Pitts out-targets him, but he's a tight end, so different argument.
I think he's going to out-target Drake London pretty heavily, but
Probably.
yeah, I mean, this is a player who they would love to be good right away. That's for sure. And Mariota is capable of having 2 fantasy relevant wide receivers. I think it would be a long shot if we would say it was likely. 18.1 years old was Drake London's breakout age. As you can imagine, that is the 99th percentile in terms of early breakout age. In his first year of in college, his first year in college, he had 567 receiving yards in just 8 games, commanded a 10.5% target share, and that quickly rose. By the time he finished his 3rd season, he was commanding a quarter of all of USC's total passing targets. Maybe that happens on the Falcons. Certainly not out at his ADP of 72.5. I am out on Cordero Patterson and Tyler Algier. These are just players that, if I'm wrong, I realize that I will lose money, but I have at 111th overall for Cordero Patterson. There are tons of Kansas City Chiefs players that I'm often taking chances on. There are high-profile wide receivers that I love taking a chance on. And even at 145, I feel like I have much better chances of getting number 1 upside than Tyler Algier. Really the player that interests me the most, believe it or not. I'm taking chances on these quarterbacks. Late round, last round, Marcus Mariota, sometimes switching it up with Desmond Ridder. I think you're going to get starts from both, most likely. But if one actually hits, no one is prioritizing them in drafts. And you can do a free stack if you want to add Alameda Zacchaeus at the end. I think he'll be on the field a lot.
Yeah, I mean, in the Pomeranian but super flex drafts that are filling at a rapid rate right now, by the time this video is out, it's probably already filled. But I've taken a decent amount of Mariota because I think Marcus Mariota is just one of those Konami code quarterbacks. Again, I hate that term, but he does have the rushing upside. And I do think that he's a decent pick all the way at the end of drafts. He obviously doesn't go all the way at the end of the draft, though, in super flex leagues.
Sorry, I missed the last thing you said there. I don't know what happened. My internet cut out.
Oh, I was gonna say that I understand that he goes kind of earlier though in super flex leagues, but in terms of like a regular one quarterback best ball draft, he's basically free, and I think the upside is there for him to not be a top 12 guy, but have some top 10 weeks because of rushing upside.
Actually, in the first Puppy Butt Superflex, I took a stand and I have, I believe, like 70% Marcus Mariota. I don't actually believe that he's going to be that strong, but especially if you're making multi-entry tournaments and doing different tournaments, that's
Yeah.
part of the ways I'm differentiating myself within the best ball sphere this year. We move on to the Carolina Panthers, who have a 6.0 win total. They have a new offensive coordinator, former Giants superstar Ben McAdoo. He worked as a Cowboys consultant last year, and now he has a new quarterback to work with as well. Baker Mayfield fully expected to get that starting role, despite Matt Rule, the head coach, pretending it's a competition. I'm sorry, Baker Mayfield will be beating out Sam Darnold. And then that makes all of these top three fantasy relevant options in Carolina really interesting to me. Christian McCaffrey, no problem with him at 101. DJ Moore, spoiler alert, in our tournament rankings, he's crazy high, like top 10 overall in our best ball rankings right now. Robbie Anderson, a solid cash pick at 154th overall. And then everybody else, Nick, they're completely free. They're like 200
Yeah.
plus in ADP. So, how are you feeling about these top three options now that Baker Mayfield is likely to be the starter?
Yeah, I do. I love DJ Moore. I've been a DJ Moore guy basically ever since he's been in the NFL. I've been banging the drum, and this guy just scores 4 fucking touchdowns every year to screw you over. But this year, maybe things have changed, right? Maybe this is finally the year where DJ Moore can get those touchdowns. Maybe this is the year where things change because in practice, it seems like Baker Mayfield loves feeding the ball to DJ Moore in the red zone based on everything that I've read. So I'm all aboard the DJ Moore hype train. And I think that DJ Moore this year, this is going to be the year where he finally has that top 10 season and people can finally stop making fun of people who draft DJ Moore because he never reaches that full peak that he can get.
He has a much better quarterback than he's had over the last few years. A much better
Agreed.
quarterback. And he's averaged 4 receiving TDs per year the last 3 seasons.
Yeah.
That will improve. It just will. And I think Robbie Anderson's a fine pick at 154th overall. It makes sense that he's had about a 2 round bump in ADP since Baker Mayfield came in, but honestly, completely fine with it. One of
Yeah.
my one of my favorite mid to late round wide receivers this year. And I'll be honest, guys, the only other player I'm taking on this offense, no Tommy Tremble, not taking Chuba or Donta Foreman, who I think would be a not so impressive running back by committee should Christian McCaffrey go down. I'm still taking shots on Terrace Marshall, part of that elite LSU offense with Joe Burrow, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. Hasn't hit yet, was a preseason stud last year, but then didn't
Yeah.
get on the field a lot. He's the one I'm taking a chance on at 213.6 overall right now.
Yeah, I have a lot of Terrace Marshall in those run backs with the week 17 matchup because I really think that Terrace Marshall has that upside to be one of those guys. Like you said, he was in that LSU offense. He was looking like one of the better wide receivers in that LSU offense that you mentioned. So I think that Marshall is certainly worth late round pick, and I think he could end up really flourishing here. I'm not as big of a Robbie Anderson guy as you. He keeps changing his first name, how to spell it. Pretty annoying, but I do think that at the end of the day, I just don't think he has it necessarily to be the clear number 2 guy. Whereas I think Terrence Marshall could really emerge and make some huge noise.
He's essentially free. Well, not free anymore. He was 175 earlier in the season. Listen to the air yards totals. I get it. They're empty calories. They're sometimes empty, but 1,200 air yards in 2016, 1,520 in 2017, 1,529 in 2018, 1,450 2019, 1,320 in 2020, And then suddenly last year, 1,072 air yards in 17 games played. I think we see it boost up into a 200 or 300 more air yard boost. Those are going to be turned into receiving yards at a much higher clip as well. He's had 90 plus targets 5 straight seasons and 100 plus targets in 2 straight seasons. I think he's going to command some work. I just do. That's the player we disagree on, and I hope Baker Mayfield, with a healthy shoulder, can make it happen. Before we move on to these last 2 teams in the NFC South, just want to remind you guys, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell too so that you always know when we're going live. We've got live best ball drafts multiple times per week, and we'll answer your question live on stream as well. Nick, you're doing Drafters drafts. We're doing Best Ball Mania drafts. We've got a former Best Ball Mania winner coming on soon. Definitely hit that notification bell. And a huge shout out, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Check out the banner if you're watching on YouTube down below. Promo code Stokastic, STOKASTIC, will get you a first match deposit bonus up to $100. But the free gifts don't stop there, because when you make a deposit into Underdog Fantasy, we will kick in the Stokastic Best Ball Rankings and Fantasy Football Rankings, a $70 value, absolutely free. Definitely check it out and take advantage of that free deposit bonus as well. All right, the New Orleans Saints, I think they're getting a lot of love. I mean, second in the division doesn't mean much, but a wild card berth is actually not out of the realm of possibilities here. They have an 8.0 win total. They've got significantly better options on the outside with Michael Thomas healthy, Jarvis Landry in here, and rookie Chris Olave at the 11th overall pick. And it looks like they're going to have Alvin Kamara, their top running back, all season long. I mean, his ADP right now is 19.8. That's not really where he's going in most drafts. It's like 12, 13, and I'm all in on it. How about you?
Yeah, I love Alvin Kamara. Jameis Winston is a guy that some people talk about how, oh, Jameis Winston doesn't dump the ball off, because back in Tampa Bay, that was the case. But in Tampa Bay, he didn't have a running back like Alvin fucking Kamara who can catch passes. So obviously, in New Orleans, he's going to dump the ball off more, and that was the case last season when he was healthy. So my personal belief here is that Alvin Kamara should be a first-round pick. So if you can continue to get the dip in, say, pick 19, he goes at pick 14, 15, I'm just drafting him all day, every day. And a quick stat on Alvin Kamara and Jameis Winston from @FootballStock on Twitter. On Jameis Winston's 166 passing attempts, Alvin Kamara saw 34 targets, a 20.4% target share, which would have led the league. He is averaging 6.2 targets per game, despite the Saints being the fourth most run-heavy offense in the NFL weeks 1 through 7. So really, it is just crazy that people think that Alvin Kamara can't do this with Jameis Winston like he did with Drew Brees. I think Alvin Kamara is going to be the biggest steal in fantasy drafts a couple months ago when you get him in the 3rd round. Now this guy is going to be a first-round pick, and I'm still smashing the draft button.
I do think we're going to see a little bit more dispersion of targets. Just because, of course, you throw to Alvin Kamara when the other options are Marquez Callaway, Deontay Hardy, and Traquan Smith. Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, and Jarvis Landry are a lot better than those 3 players. They just are.
Sure.
And so Alvin Kamara is certainly going to get his, but will his target share be as high? That's not my most likely outcome, personally. I think Thomas is going to command his looks, especially the way he's been looking in training camp. Obviously needs to stay healthy. Jarvis Landry is a player who is a Pro Bowl caliber player, averaged double-digit fantasy points every single season since 2014. Pretty impressive. And he doesn't need to do it necessarily on a ton of yardage. He can do it on these short area targets where they're just trying to move the chains. Michael Thomas is a player who I'm actually coming around on. Earlier in the offseason, I was completely off on. You had him inside your top 10 receivers. That's going to look really good if he ends up having a great year. But I want to talk about Chris Olave. You don't use 11th overall pick on a scrub. And I know he's basically the 4th receiving option and maybe 5th if Adam Troutman has any sort of role on this team. But, man, this is a best ball profile I want to take chances on. Pick 100, especially if he falls sometimes. I get he's falling into the 90s now sometimes. I got to take my shots here. Not necessarily a slam dunk, but I think Olave, coming out of Ohio State, could have a huge year. That's my dark horse pick on this team.
Yeah, I agree. I like Chris Olave a decent amount. I think Jarvis Landry is like one of those picks where in your redraft league, you draft him, you throw him in when there's like a bunch of players on bye week. He scores like 12 points and you're happy. I think that Jarvis Landry, while I have taken him in best ball, isn't really that big splash play pick. Like he's just the guy that fills in as your like wide receiver 3. Whereas Chris Olave is the guy who could be the number 1 receiver on your team in a week and have that crazy 25 plus point game. So I completely agree with you on Chris Olave, and I have to start drafting more of him because I am in love with a lot of receivers in the range that Olave goes in.
It's
So it
true.
does make it tough to pull the trigger on him because he does go in a range where basically from like where Michael Thomas goes in pick 56.2 all the way to pick 100, there are so many wide receivers that I really like drafting.
It's true. It's true. And, I'm worried about the red zone targets. I'm worried about like Jarvis Landry last year when healthy commanded 25% of the Browns targets. He's not going
Yeah,
to
he's a
do
great
that on
player.
the Chiefs, on the Saints, but he definitely won't do it for the Chiefs. He's not going to do that on the
That's for
Saints,
sure.
but uh, there are a lot of players, 3 to be exact, who can command a huge target share, which makes me concerned about Olave, and yet I'm still taking my chances. I'm out on Mark Ingram. I'm out on Adam Trapman. I'm fine taking some late round Taysom Hill, but he's moving up in drafts sometimes. I will not take him until he falls outside the top 190. We move to our final team here, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, by far the most exciting team, the highest expectations team in this division.
Yeah.
Todd Bowles takes over for Bruce Arians after some very strange situations. Byron Leftwich as the offensive coordinator. This team still has so much firepower. Mike Evans, one of your favorite picks of all of 2022 fantasy. Leonard Fournette, and my favorite on this core 4 players, Chris Godwin, who I think is going to play week 1 and be impactful from the start.
Yep, I completely agree. I don't know if he's going to play week 1, but I do think even if he doesn't play week 1, you just draft him. And what, you miss him 2, 3 weeks? Who cares in reality, right? I think Chris Godwin has the upside to be a top 10 receiver in terms of points per game. He is one of the more talented receivers in the NFL. I'm still smash drafting Mike Evans. People are getting a little bit worried. This man tweaks his hammy every summer. It's basically clockwork at this point. I could have told you that was going to happen before we even got to this point in August. But at the end of the day here, I do still think Mike Evans is the guy to have in Tampa Bay. You definitely have to pay a bigger price for him, but I think that that touchdown upside, people are always going to talk about it falling off. And I even have done that for years, saying, you know what, Mike Evans, it's impossible for this guy to keep scoring touchdowns. The guy was scoring touchdowns with Jameis. He's scoring touchdowns with one of the best the best quarterback ever, Tom Brady. To me, it's a no-brainer to take Mike Evans early in drafts. And I think in the second round, he's a smash pick.
I do too. I do too. He'll get over the hammy. He'll do it. He'll be fine. I think Fournette, in terms of expected fantasy points per game, some of the most valuable opportunity in all of fantasy football last year, top 5 at the position. Sometimes falling into the 3rd round. Chris Godwin and Leonard Fournette are going to be part of one of the most efficient, voluminous offenses, and you can sometimes get them in the 3rd and 6th rounds. Are you kidding me, guys? And then stack on Brady on top of that. Yes, the fall off could happen. We saw what happened to players like Peyton Manning, where it just like completely stopped working in the final year. And that could happen for Tom Brady. But in best ball, the ceiling, that top 1% outcome for these players, absolute league winning smash players. I'm taking as many chances on Tampa Bay Buccaneers as I can. They're like the Chiefs for me. I think we're overthinking this despite Tom Brady being 45 years old.
I completely agree. I mean, Tom Brady, eventually he's going to fall off, but I don't think he would have came back just to, like, if he thought that this was going to be the year where he's going to fall off. So I think he's going to be just fine. And I know that you may be more of a Julio Jones guy than myself, but I'm still all aboard, choo choo, the Russell Gage bandwagon with his ADP falling. I think that right now is the best time to buy Russell Gage. I think it was absolutely redonkulous that he was going in like the 6th or 7th round a couple months ago, but now he's going much outside that range, outside the top 100 in most drafts. So I'll keep drafting Russell Gage and just assume that maybe Julio just gets hurt and he is like the clear number 3 receiver. I could be wrong, obviously, but when you're at pick 100 plus, I'm not just drafting someone to be safe, right? I'm drafting for upside, and I think Russell Gage has that crazy upside where he really is a big player for this Tampa Bay team.
Totally agree. I actually think there's ability for Gage, Jones, Godwin, and Evans to all hit value at ADP. That's how many
Definitely.
team expected fantasy points are available for the Tampa Bay offense when healthy. I only think one running back is going to be fantasy relevant. I do. I think it's
Agreed.
going to be Fournette or the rookie Rashad White, who looked good in his first usage in preseason. I know they're not going to turn over the reins entirely to a running back, but I really, really like this team at ADP. Gage at 113th overall all day long. And Julio Jones, despite being about a 10th round pick now, I'm absolutely fine. You were starting in fantasy leagues Evans, Godwin, Antonio Brown, and Rob Gronkowski every single week that they were healthy last year.
Yeah.
And I feel like you're going to be able to do that for 4 players in the receiving game and that running back one as well. Any final words, any thoughts about the tight ends before we hop out of here? We got to run here. The NFC South is pretty straightforward, though.
Yeah, definitely. I did one of those candle vigils to pray towards Rob Gronkowski returning from his retirement so that all that money that I invested in him ends up coming back to me. But yeah, in reality, he's not coming back probably. So I'm all in on drafting just Kyle Rudolph or Cameron Brate later in drafts. People are steaming up Rudolph. It does look weird to see Kyle Rudolph wear number 8. And for that reason alone, I like Kyle Rudolph.
And I'm going the opposite direction. I'm actually fading all Tampa Bay tight ends. I
Okay.
think that they're going to go 4 wide much more often. I think they're just going to downplay the tight end position a little bit more. And I'm taking players like Tyler Johnson, Scotty Miller, Cyril Grayson, Rashad Perryman. They've got depth at this position besides those top 4, and Tom Brady spreads it around more than you might think. Not going to be a ton of fantasy relevant weeks, but the weeks that they are fantasy relevant, I believe two touchdown upside is in all of their range of outcomes. All
Agreed.
right, 4 teams up, 4 teams down. This is the NFC South. Would be absolutely shocked if Tampa Bay doesn't come out a winner. They've got to deal with some problems in the offensive line, but besides that, they've got very few holes on that team. For Nick, follow him at Notorious FNTSY. My name is Matt Savoca at Draftaholic. We got you covered all season at best ball draft season and season long here on the Stochastic Best Ball channel. Until next time, we'll see you guys later.